One of the most important things in Splatoon are the objectives. We have 4 of these in Ranked, plus Turf War, and I want to go over them all, how they work, and if they're good or bad. I'm a Splatoon pro player, and by talking about these objectives, I hope to share a bit of understanding as to what makes them good, what problems they have, and what changes they should get going into Splatoon 3. So subscribe if you enjoy, and let's get started. First up, the most basic and common Ranked mode, Splat Zones. This has 1 or 2 zones that you have to paint to control. It's basically King of the Hill if you've played some other games. It's very similar to that, except the main difference compared to others is instead of having to stand directly in the space, you simply have to paint over it to control it. Splatoon 1 was mostly the same, but it's worth pointing out that they had more split zones maps, where zones would be closer to your own side of the base and there would be one on the opposite side. These were terrible. They were way too split up and it made stalling your own zone safely way too easy, capping zones really annoying, and lockouts absolutely important. The zone needs to be closer to the middle of the map, which is why every split zone map was either changed to have the 2 zones right next to each other or made a single zones map, such as Port Mackerel or Moray Towers. The main criticism I hear of this mode is you spend the entire time painting a square, which, I'm sorry, if your zones games are like this, you are playing the mode wrong. To effectively maintain control of a splat zone, you want to push slightly ahead of the objective, so the opponents can't stall it, and they have to use specials to move you out of the way. As such, when the mode is played correctly, there's often a lot of times where there's not really any attention put on it whatsoever, and teams are fighting away from it. Painting zone definitely does still happen, but it's at more select points during the game, not all the time. And I'd argue it's not that bad. It can still be pretty intense to try to flip it back and forth, and it plays between both kills or painting the zone depending on what weapons are present. So I don't think it's a boring objective by any means, and even if you don't enjoy it, again, you're not doing it a lot of the game anyway. The main thing that matters for this mode is map design. The zones need to be far away enough so they can't be stalled, especially for 2 zones maps. Even if they're really close together, it's way easier to contest 2 smaller zones because you only need to paint over 50% of one of the 2 zones. Blackbelly Skate Park is probably the prime example of this, where just 2 burst bombs can easily contest the zone, and you can do it from safe locations, making the map very stally. Personally, if they do 2 zones maps in Splatoon 3, I'm hoping they'll be just a little bit larger. As a whole though, as long as the maps are designed well, zones is an absolutely great mode. Alright, let's talk tower control. This is a community favorite, and for good reason. Because the objective slowly moves towards the enemy's side, this is a very aggressive mode. Splatoon 2 added checkpoints, which don't require much explanation. They help the tower path be a lot better, and yeah, this is absolutely the most aggressive of the 5 modes, and that can make it a ton of fun for everyone. Unless if you're the player who has to ride the tower, in which you have the most boring dog shit objective in the game. The person riding tower gets absolutely nothing to do besides painting and throwing bombs. They're stuck with completely crippled movement, and there's really nothing for them to do. It is absolutely unfun. This also leads to another problem, which is tower's special advantage. Now, every mode has passive special advantage. You can check out this video here for a brief rundown of all of them, but tower control has the only one that's legitimately flawed. Every other mode gives the highest special charge to the team that's losing, but tower control is the exception. The losing team does get 2.25 points per special per second, but if you're in control of the tower, you get 4.5 points per special per second. That's the highest in the game, and if that doesn't sound like a lot, remember, that's for every single one of your 4 teammates. That is 18 special points per second just by pushing the objective. Because yeah, that's the kind of thing you have to do when your 4th player is stuck riding a boring objective and can't contribute a lot in fights. That's how you make it fair. Now, if you're pushing tower against a team that's losing, that's mostly fine because both of you are getting passive special charge, and so it makes it more even. However, if you're losing and pushing tower, it is 4.5 points per special per second versus 0. The best comparison I can make is Smash 4 Rage. It is way too biased in the losing team making a comeback to the point where it makes it brutally unfair for the defending team. Teams getting a bit of special advantage is fine, but it's just done way too harshly in tower control. Luckily, both these problems have the same solution. The points for special is flawed because the person on tower can't do anything, and the objective is boring because the person on tower can't do anything. So all we gotta do is make the person on tower actually get to play the game. There's a bunch of different ways you can do this. I've heard some people talk about a type of salmon red cannon on it, but whatever they do, the whole point needs to be that it should be fun, and the player on tower should be able to do something. If tower control can do that in Splatoon 3, as well as adjusting the points for special advantage because of it, then I think it could actually be the best mode by a landslide. And when it comes to making the objective more fun, there's another good example they can look to, which is Rainmaker. Also gonna break up this great transition to Rainmaker to say stop designing tower paths that move backwards, they ruin every single one, and also stop putting them over an ocean. Okay, thank you. Anyway, so Rainmaker is basically like a reverse capture the flag. You take this super weapon and you move it to the other team's goal. This immediately has a lot of advantages over tower control. One, the objective is actually fun. It gives you a really powerful weapon, and that can be great to use. And two, you have a lot more choice over where you can go. Rather than a set path in tower control, if you want to make the Rainmaker go to the left route or the right route or the middle one, it's up to you. So if you pick up the objective, not only do you get a cool weapon, but you get some decision making in terms of where you want to go. Rainmaker by far has the most fun objective in Splatoon, and it deserves a lot of props for that. The main critique of Rainmaker is that it can be too fast, which is absolutely true, but it doesn't really have anything to do with Rainmaker itself, but more the maps. Do you have multiple routes to push on? Is it not too quick to get to the goal? Are there ample places to defend from? If so, the mode will feel great. If not, it will feel terrible. It's also worth noting that Rainmaker really suffers from Splatoon 2's specials because of the global range. It can mean you get targeted by things like Stingray and can't really do anything about it. So the specials being designed better to where they're more fightable would benefit Rainmaker a ton because it can actually fight specials. And my final thing, which is a bit of a nitpick, is there needs to be both more Rainmaker free zones and they need to be harsher. Rainmaker stalling is really good, and even in a Rainmaker free zone, you can stall about 20 seconds, which a lot of times can burn off the remainder of the clock or a significant portion of the match. There's also some really good stalling spots that flat out do not have Rainmaker free zones. But yeah, if the penalty on those are increased and they're put in better places, that would be really nice. But as a whole, as long as the maps are good, Rainmaker will be good. Before we get to the divisive rank mode, let's talk about the most popular thing in the game. The only one Nintendo wants to show in trailers, it seems, Turf War. Turf War is the most simple mode. You paint the ground, whoever paints the ground more wins. There's no real central objective like all the others, and this is great. It's a beginning mode that people play when they just start the game. You don't want to have to worry about this Rainmaker weapon I have to play or how to toss clams or anything. Keeping it simpler for the players starting out is a great way to have them focus on learning the basics of the game without worrying about an objective. The shorter match time of 3 minutes is also pretty good. It lets people jump in and out of games faster and they don't have to commit as much time. I think Turf War is really good for an introductory mode and it works amazing for new players. However, when you look at it outside of that, Turf War has two main problems. The one that affects everyone is the fact that it's actually a terrible casual mode. Why? Well, because if the teams are one-sided, there is no way this match ends fast. In Rainmaker, if one team is better than the other, you are done in a minute. Tower control, you're done in 2. Zones, you're done in 1.5. Clam Blitz, you're done anywhere from 1 to 2 minutes. But in Turf War, if the teams are one-sided, you are stuck there, losing for 3 minutes. Yes, in a perfect world, we would just have matchmaking that's fair and balanced, but I'm sorry, that's just not the reality we live in. Turf War needs a knockout feature, so when the teams are one-sided, the match can end and people can move on to their separate lobbies, rather than dealing with the dreaded spawn camping. Another topic I've talked about before, by the way, if you're curious. I definitely think the knockout should be really harsh. It should be something that's rare and only happen if a team is super one-sided better. Something like having 80% of the map controlled for 5 seconds would be a great example. This also would slightly help the second problem, which is a more minor one in the fact that what you do in the first few minutes of the game does not have that big an impact. If you lose map control in the last 20 seconds, you're gonna lose regardless of whatever happened the opening 2 minutes and 40 seconds. Some people don't have a problem with this, but personally I do. I'm not trying to say the first 2 minutes and 40 seconds didn't matter, or that you simply should have won the fight with the better map control, but I'm saying losing one fight should not flip the entire game on its head. You should have a chance to defend. I think the best solution to this was done in a Splatfist stage, which is domes that drop from the sky at certain intervals. This means if you push up and take control of the space, it is yours for the rest of the game, so having an advantage earlier will give you an advantage later into the game and make it feel more worthwhile. While we're at it, here's a small nitpick. Have 25% of the map closest to your spawn already painted when the game starts, because yeah, in competitive Turf War, that first 30 seconds is spent painting your spawn. What fun. Now, that's a lot of new features, so I think it's important I make this distinction. The changes outside of a knockout feature should be something done for a ranked version of Turf War if they want to make the mode more competitive, and I don't think it should be a thing on a casual version. A lot of people want to rank Turf War, and I'm one of them, but I think if they want to make it as good as the other ranked modes, they have to make adjustments so it plays closer to those, and those adjustments should not affect the base normal Turf War that people play when they start the game. Again, the mode is amazing and thrives best with brand new players trying to learn the game, and that experience shouldn't be ruined. All you gotta do is add a knockout feature. Overall, Turf War is fine, but but it has so much potential to be a normal mode and not just an introductory one, and I hope Splatoon 3 lets us finally have a good ranked version of it. Lastly is Clam Blitz, and I've talked about this mode a lot before in its own video, so I'm gonna keep this short here, but basically, this is a mode that thrives in coordination. Normally, only one person keeps control of the objective most of the time, but in Clam Blitz, it is a team responsibility, and there's special objective plays that you could only make with your team and only in this mode, which is awesome. In a competitive or coordinated setting, Clam Blitz is the best mode in the game. However, it is the worst solo queue mode, because people do not coordinate when your only options are this way and booyah. If they really want to port this mode to Splatoon 3, it needs to do two things. One, the objective needs to be simpler and smaller. I'm not quite sure how they could do this, but making it so that there's less things on the map could make it easier for people to focus on what needs to get done. Clam Blitz has too much to remember, and for the average player, it can get confusing, as much as I love the depth to it. Secondly, is you have to trick people into playing like a team with selfish rewards. Yes, this is a donkey quote, and it's very important when it comes to team-based shooters. Splatoon 3 has shown they're capable of it with stuff like the ink vacuum, where you're rewarded for protecting your teammates with a large shot, so let's see it applied to the objective. This is another thing where I don't have a specific example for how this could look, but if teammates coordinate to score a push, it should reward them selfishly. That will encourage people in a solo queue environment to try to work well with each other for their own benefit. Clam Blitz has a lot of work to do to be a functioning ranked mode, and while it's an amazing team mode, it needs those adjustments because the majority of people play Splatoon by themselves in ranked, and that's really important to be accounted for. Splatoon's objectives are pretty good. There's just a lot of untapped potential, and I hope Splatoon 3 can really optimize these modes even more than they did from Splatoon 1 to 2. But let me know what you guys think. What's your favorite, and what changes do you want to see? And I'll see you all in another video.